Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Dern, and I am thrilled that you are joining me because I get to talk to two of my favorite people and filmmakers, Will McCormick and Michael Govier, about this most gorgeous film they've made, an animated short that I have the privilege to being a producer on. And so we get to have a little discussion about If Anything Happens, I Love You, and welcome, you guys.
Thanks, Laura. Delighted to be here with you and so excited to talk to you about the film and so grateful for your partnership on the film.
Thank you so much, Laura. We are honored to be here and obviously honored to continue to work with you and on the film. It's just been a treat.
Well, it certainly has been for me, as you guys know, when I got to see the film screened for the first time. Like millions now, I could say, of people, I had the same response, which was barely able to speak. I lost breath witnessing, being steeped in clearly the emotional response you would want from making a film about this most heart-wrenching, devastating topic of gun violence. And so participating in making sure as many people can see this and feel the impact as well certainly has become a great goal of mine. So I feel so lucky. But I have asked you many questions about the making of the film, and I will be redundant, but a question I haven't asked you, fellow actors, is I want to know if it's true, because I was like, how did they start collaborating as writer co-directors? Is it true that you literally met in an acting class and that's how it all happened?
It's kind of like a Hollywood story. We did
I felt like it was an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Totally. Like we absolutely met in an acting studio in the Valley. And we both started on the same day. We were like the new kids in class, and we ended up like sitting next to each other, and it just started this friendship. And it was just this amazing little moment.
And when you guys met, I mean, I certainly know from Will and being friends with Rashida, that his work as an artist is multi-layered. And was that something you knew as well at that time, Michael? Like you knew, hey, I'm an actor, I'm a writer, I'm a director, I'm all these things?
I knew when I met Will, I just met him and like, man, this is a real nice guy in my acting class. He's super cool. And then I went and did a scene. And I finished doing the scene, and Will leans over to me and he says, hey, great job on that scene, man. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. Because we're doing scenes from movies and films and whatnot. And then afterwards, we're walking out to our cars, and he goes, hey, I should probably tell you, I wrote that with Rashida. And it was from Celeste and Jesse Forever. And I had done it, but I didn't know who Will was like that level. So I was like, then all of a sudden I'm like, thank you for not telling me before I went and did the scene. I think I would have lost my mind having the writer write. He's a genius, and Rashida, both of them, I felt that pressure afterwards,
Oh my God, that's amazing.
It was.
Well, I'm curious what it was in getting to know each other, leaping forward to this film that not only made you know you wanted to collaborate, but more particularly the birth of wanting to collaborate on something that would speak to the horrors of gun violence in this country. How did that all come to you guys?
I think we were both originally interested in writing about grief. We would meet in the park and talk about what we were working on, and I think we were both interested in writing about grief and sort of wrestling with some of the loss in our own life and how to tackle that in story. I mean, grief has sort of been a recursive theme in everything I've been trying to do my entire career. Like, I mean, even as a little boy, my favorite movie was Ordinary People. I don't know why it wasn't Gremlins, but I was like always drawn towards loss and stories about loss. And Michael had this beautiful idea, which is the the first shot of the film, the shadows talking to each other. And it was this beautiful sort of Jungian visualization of grief and how when we're in pain, we can't sort of reach these shadow souls because we're in too much agony to reach them, that the pain that we're in is actually like a block between ourselves and our souls. And then we kept reading about the all too common gun violence in our country, and we thought, what would it be like to write about that type of titanic, unthinkable loss, which is all too common? And that was sort of a pastiche of things, but it's a very serious thing to try to capture, and we sort of took it very seriously. We spent a year on the script, which is only 10 pages long, and we partnered with Everytown for Gun Safety became friends of the film really early on, because we wanted to make sure that this experience was authentic to that type of loss. And that's how we really began to build the movie. But it really came from an organic place where we wanted to try to write about this loss that is unthinkable. I mean, when your parent dies, you're an orphan. When your spouse dies, you're called a widow. When your kid dies, there's no word for that, and it's just, it happens all the time to gun violence. So that was sort of our North Star creatively. And, looking back on it, it was such a hard thing to do that I'm glad we just dove into it and we just went into it with open arms. And Michael was such a great collaborator. I couldn't have made the film with anybody else.
And when you speak to Michael's idea, which is so beautifully put, and what a gorgeous concept of the grief outside of us with this shadow imagery, did you know then or even before then that you wanted to create it through animated storytelling, or did that evolve?
It was always, from the very beginning, it was an animated film, even talking about it at the very beginning, because we felt this was like the perfect gateway to tell this story, because I feel there's like a deeper connection to animated characters at times to talk about bigger subjects. And it's kind of like an easy way to ease you into a wonderful conversation and maybe a wonderful emotional experience, as opposed to in live action, it just might be a little too intense and way too real. And then you're going to actually not have conversations you want to have. It'll be more about how realistic that moment was.
Right. And in terms of, separate from the theme of grief, in terms of your relationship with Everytown, was it very early on that you started connecting with or speaking to survivors of gun violence, family members whose families have been victimized by these tragedies? When did that start happening? Was that after you had made something or through the process of writing?
It was kind of right after we had kind of made something to show. So we wanted, and so it was still early on in case we needed to pivot or, basically we were getting early feedback. So we had already had like an animatic and we showed it to survivors, and their feedback was incredible. And it was one of the best days of my life. They watched the film and they came up and they were crying, and then I'm with them and I'm crying, and they just said, "I feel seen." And that was it. And it was just like this huge emotional moment. And I don't think a greater gift has been given to us as far as those little moments where these survivors, and then because of this, all these survivors keep contacting us, telling us their experiences. People from Sandy Hook, people from Parkland, people from terrorist attacks, people from all kinds of things keep contacting us and telling us their story and say, "Thank you. This is what grief looks like. And this is what it feels like." Because grief is all these little moments. And it's these quiet moments. It's the moment when you come home and you see the writing on a piece of paper and you remember them. It's the moment where you find an article of clothing and you remember them. That song you always listen to. And this is the waves of grief. And sometimes grief isn't big and loud. It's just these quiet little simple moments where it can really hit home. And we wanted to express that in the film to kind of honor the quiet experiences that people are truly having.
Well, the writing, you guys did such an incredible job, because it's so beautifully laid out, because the grief is the experience and everything else feels so effortless that we're just in the emotion of it. We don't even, it's like it's boundaryless and there is no movie. It's just a raw experience. And the animation, which I know very little about the process of developing an animated piece, but I'm so interested in it directorially and even in the writing process, how you started imagining how it would look, and then with the animation team, how you guys work together. Because the one thing that particularly moved me about it was the elusiveness almost in color, that nothing felt saturated, or that it allowed me to have my own emotional experience without ever being jarred. Just I was in the trauma of the experience. So again, it just all felt like one emotional expression, and how the animation mirrored that, as well as the writing and the direction. So I'd love to, and I know about our amazing animation team, but maybe you can speak to that a little bit and share your process.
Yeah, that's beautifully put, Laura. I mean, we talked a lot about the style of the film and watched hundreds of animated short films, and there's a few that inspired us. But really, you know, our North Star, in terms of art, was we were going for total parsimony in style, and we sort of had a rule early on, right, Michael? We had a cardinal rule that anything that didn't need to be in frame, we would remove it. And so we kept stripping the film. And, you know, ultimately we thought we could do a lot more with less. And that's because of a couple reasons. We wanted it to feel barren and sort of desperate and lonely, like that loss can feel like. So we wanted to feel very, very, very lean. But also it worked really well in terms of the memory scape of the film, because, you know, when you remember things, you don't remember exactly what was in the room, but you do remember how you felt. So we were trying to pare it down to just the simple, essential emotion of the scene. And also grief that intense is very acute. So we wanted to just keep it really focused and have every scene just have the raw emotion of it pulsing. And it was really fun. I mean, in a movie with no dialogue, it's really scary too, because you're like, can we pull this off? And we're going for total leanness. But in fact, the more we kept stripping it the sort of emotion of the piece just kept sort of rising. And it was a really, really exciting build.
And it felt like one of the ways, like tonally, we wanted to kind of feel like a fog, or a gentle wind that just would kind of come around you. Then all of a sudden you realize you're like, oh, I'm in it. I'm part of it. Like you're talking about, you're part of the experience, as opposed to, it's not a wave that hits you. It's just a gradual fog that surrounds you. And then you realize you're encapsulated and you're part of it.
Yeah.
And the beginning of the film, we wanted to be very color tonally. We went with grays and very simple color with little pops of color, like in the shirt and the hole on the wall. And then as we went through to the memory section, you see the most color you see, but the color is still framed through grief, because the edges of the frame all drop off into grays, because the conversation they're having is at the present moment and they're talking about their grief. So memory is still affected by the present. And so it was like, we're always in the present, even as we recall that day we had, that wonderful day, because it's not as perfect as that. And so we always wanted to keep those things together to show. And then we do think there's a tremendous amount of hope at the end of the film, and a tremendous amount of love, because the love they had for their daughter, the love that they have for each other, and the courage it takes to have those conversations and start to come together.
And can you speak about our amazing female-centric animation team and your collaborators that you worked with?
Young Renault is an absolute star, and she had just graduated from Cal Arts. And we had contacted a professor at Cal Arts, and we said, we're looking to interview animation directors. And they said, she's like, I got someone for you. Because we sent her the script, and she goes, I have someone who fits this tone. You should interview her. And we're like, okay. And we meet her for coffee, and we clicked instantly. She had read our script and she said, this script reminds me of Father and Daughter, which is one of our favorite films that we love. And because Will and I were just talking about what's our first model, and it was the film Father and Daughter. And we both said it at like the same time, and it was just kind of this perfect pairing. And then from there, her wonderful art she created and this perfect collaboration as far as stripping things down and making them in this kind of like raw, lean style just completely clicked. And then Youngren brought on 2 other students that had just graduated from Cal Arts, Michelle Anejo and Julia Rodriguez, and brought all of them on. And so then we had this little band, and it was literally just us in the kitchen table making a movie. And so, I mean, it was just this scrappy little thing where I think if you talk about it, you're like, that's kind of silly. Like, why did we just did it and we just wouldn't stop,
Well, you get a little lucky sometimes, I think, making movies. And this, Michael and I feel so lucky. We feel so lucky when we met Youngren. We feel so lucky when we got to work with you and Jamie. We felt so lucky that, Netflix came on board. Like there's things that have been kept happening with this film, which feels like it has its own like life to it. But, the thing about indie film too is it's really cool, right? You're like, I have a script with my friend that we wrote. I love the way you draw. Do you want to make a movie? Like you're just at a coffee shop thinking like, I love the way you draw. Like it breaks my heart. And we have this story. Do you want to work together? And we don't have any, we don't know what we're doing, but we know we have to tell this story. We know how we want to tell it. But that's also, I think just sort of the spark and the energy of independent filmmaking, right? It's just everyone was there and everyone is there for the right reasons where they would do anything to tell this story. And I think that's when great things happen, right? Like everyone's just in the room for the right reasons. And I felt that way from the moment I met Michael and everybody who came on the project. Like everyone just showed up every day with the full heart to tell the story. And it just has been incredible. It keeps happening, it keeps going,
Well, and when your hearts are there to be of service, to speak about something that is so unspoken, it feels like a great gift for all of us who get to then continue to be part of it and share the story. And I know in some of these interviews, people have said, can you believe that it's a TikTok sensation? Like, can you believe that it's so connected for people? And the first time that was said to me, I was here because I never go anywhere, like none of us. And my daughter Jaya, who you guys met when I first came to see the film, and she came with me, heard them ask. And she said, why do they keep asking like they're surprised that it's a TikTok sensation? I said, well, it's, I think, such a new idea for a film to get that kind of support, and especially a film about grief. And she goes, no, it's not. It's because they wanted to make a film about grief and they picked the most universal theme. And I said, a school shooting? She was like, yeah, Mom, when you first heard about Columbine, it was this horrific, rare tragedy. We're growing up when there are school shootings every week. And that both that idea and at the time that the sort of viral expression in TikTok of sharing sort of what you looked like before you saw the film and what you look and felt like after you saw the film. My daughter, being on TikTok, started sharing thoughts and ideas with other, particularly teenagers and young adults in and around the movie. And this group of kids from around the world were all talking together and sharing their feelings. And she said, oh my God, we're all talking about what a terrifying time it is, but at least we're not scared every day about going to school. And I was like, oh my God, that they're processing and sharing not only the grief of loss, but the grief of a time when going to school felt safe. And so here they are in this virtual world, which we're all seeing as so traumatizing. At the same time, it's a safer way to go to school right now. So just the fact that as a parent, I'm in a household that's allowed a conversation for me to have with my own daughter, thanks to you guys, but to hear groups of young adults and teens all over the world sharing together a continual dialogue is just, I can't tell you how grateful I am to hear them talk about, what has been deemed impossible to discuss. Obviously, gun violence. There's been such little real conversation to strip down and discuss it. But as we know, and as we know people who love film, how little conversation there is around grief. I can think of a couple of movies in my life that really addressed it on any level, and with much wider themes, less deeply relatable. So it's so amazing that it would be an animated short film around this specific incident that would be that universal to people. I wonder if there's anything you want to share about things you've heard and responses to the film and this sort of TikTok sensation aspect of it, what that's been like for you guys.
I as far as like when we were building out the film and talking to, a lot of the other artists that are working with Will and I and you and all of us, they're of a younger generation than us. And all of us went to school. I did not have active shooter drills. I didn't have that. All we had was a fire drill. That was it. And so as we talked to these young artists and stuff and said, would you guys have that coming up? They're like, oh yeah, it was all the time. Like we say, we had a fire drill. And so that was a huge thing. It's like, it is such a part of the school culture now that, oh yeah, we just do that. That was Tuesday. And you're like, kind of like, that's really intense that you were preparing that the school will be under siege. And that's the response, is that we're just going to all hide. And it's such a foreign experience that Will and I and anyone had that's of an older generation. And that was so wonderful to have these stories with them and hear their tales. And it's like, oh my gosh, I did this. Then I have a lot of friends who are teachers and they started talking. It's like, oh yeah, it's really intense, man. It's like, we have a bucket for a toilet. We have food. We have all these things in the cupboard just in case, so we can board up the door and last like 8 or 10 hours. And I was like, whoa, I did not know that's how far this had gone. And so I think bringing these conversations and then bringing it back to like one experience of grief kind of makes it excessively universal. And as far as like TikTok is concerned, TikTok was this most intimate experience I've ever had with millions of people. They are opening up their hearts in this way that I never expected. They are crying. They're talking about their pain, their experiences. And as a filmmaker, it's like I've watched the film in a theater, but I've never had this intimate of experience. Like you are right there with someone and they are crying and they are emoting and having this wonderful cathartic experience. And a lot of people needed a good cry this year especially, to deal with all this pent-up trauma.
Yeah, my niece texted me, said, Uncle Will, your movie's trending on TikTok. And I was like, I don't even totally know what that means.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
So I went onto TikTok and it just kept, every day there was 2 million, 4 million, 5 million, 10, 20 million, 30 million, 40 million. It's over 60 million views. And it's so surreal and astonishing and humbling and rewarding as a storyteller to watch people experience the film and open their hearts up. And to echo both of you, I think that there's something looming for my niece's generation that we didn't deal with, which is this fear. And there was something about the film and there's something about just stories in general where we're not able to, we can get out of ideology and we can get out of statistics and we can shine a light on one story, and getting inside one story makes it intimate, right? It makes it something you can hold and that you can feel. But it's just been remarkable to see people. It's not the type of thing that you would think normally, to me, would explode on TikTok. You think it would be a water bottle challenge, but this was something where people wanted to feel, they wanted to grieve. And for me, it was sort of like a really beautiful reminder that we need stories to wrestle with what's going on in the world, that people really do want to feel. And it was so incredible to see people show up to the movie like that. It was just really, really beautiful and really humbling as a storyteller.
How are you all working in your partnership with Everytown now? Is there anything you want to share about sort of continued service and education?
They've been sharing the film with the different chapters, and they're going to start to use it to lead conversations about grief and trauma. And so it's slowly getting out to the different groups, and then different groups can choose how they want to do it. And supplemental material and like questions and like leading discussionaires and things like that are being led to distributed to lead these conversations. But it's like, this is the film, like this is the greatest wish that we could give back and help. And the fact that the film is being received in this way, and it's such a wonderful tool, and Everytown is so happy to have this to begin conversations.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And also, I just have a couple more questions because I know we'll need to wrap up, but maybe we can talk a little bit about the choice of music and what, given the dialogue-less choice, what your process was in thinking about what would be the voice of this film, because it's so extraordinary. I wonder, what those conversations were like and how you got to your choice.
The composer is a woman who's a friend of mine and whose work I've admired, Lindsay Marcus, and truly her first compositions, this is another moment in filmmaking when you get really, really lucky, but her first compositions around the film were so good and so spot on that even Michael and I had to sort of like walk around the block and come back to them because they were so perfect. The first music that she wrote was actually the score that ended up in the film. And,
It was because we started to think we were crazy because like, are we just excited because it's new? And then it's just like, and then we kept listening to it like, no, this is perfect. She said, I felt really inspired and just kind of wrote down and just created this. I thought it would really fit these moments. And we're like, yeah, you did it. And then it was kind of like, well, I guess we're moving on. It was just amazing. It was the stroke of genius, and her added artistry was just so pure.
Yeah, her music is so beautiful, and then we were really, really excited to get the King Princess song. That song was just a jam that was in from early boards, and it was a really beautiful ballad and also wistful, and also kind of felt like the song that little girl would be obsessed with and listen to over and over and over again. That song that you listen to on the road trip. So. King Princess is amazing and such a beautiful songwriter, and we were so lucky to get that song. And then we love our orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah. The Inner City Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles. That was just like another blessing. Our the other producer, Marianne Garger, she reached out and told them about the film, and they came on board and scored the section of Beautiful Dreamer, which is kind of in that memory section. And it was just absolutely wonderful to work with Charles Dickerson and just have their kind of little touch on the film, just to kind of keep adding a little more magic.
And what about what's next? What do you, now that you've had this experience I mean, listen, I'm an actor first. So as one of your producers, I'm like, what animated without dialogue piece do you then transform into lots of dialogue so I can play a part in this movie are you thinking of next?
Well, that would be dream come true. So we will be in touch very soon.
Well, I hope for many and both things, but yeah, I mean, I know you're both so brilliant and prolific, and I know work that you're doing, next, Will, and you and Rashida are working on, but as collaborators together, have you been already in the works on other things as well?
We just finished writing another short film that we're going to go into production with soon. It does not have dialogue, but we're working on a feature also that does have dialogue.
It has all the dialogue. We'll make up for it in the feature. We're going to double dialogue. It'll just be flooded.
Yeah.
But
will they please stop talking?
Yeah, we're our next short film too is we're trying to make another movie that we want to try to build stories that have something to say. So we're going to work with the exact same team.
Gorgeous.
With the exact same animation team, and we're just getting out of the gate now. We just finished the script yesterday.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start working on board soon, and it's exciting. Yeah.
How incredible to, find a myriad of ways to tell a story and to, I mean, I would think the discipline of expressing grief in the way you have with this gorgeous film will only add to turning toward a feature where, there are all these ways to express an idea. But what an incredible way as filmmakers to with such grace tell a whole story that heartbreakingly and part of life that is so universal as grief, and for every age in the way you have, that it can touch and impact people of all ages in the way that you express it. So that's really exciting. Has that been the case that you feel like, oh my God, if we can tell a story like this when we write our feature or whatever, there's a lot more freedom in a different kind of way.
I mean, it was a challenge because you're taking away something that's such a crutch of the writer. It's like, okay, we're going to do dialogue. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're just going to write out all the images and write out all these moments and these feelings. And so it's like, it's changed it. And I think it made both of us better writers as far as telling tighter stories in a more succinct way. And then personally, as far as the grief, this film has actually helped me and my family because my wife lost her brother about 20 years ago, and he died very young, not to gun violence. He got sick and he died within 24 hours of a bacterial disease. And they never talked about it, ever. To this extent, I was always like, well, what's going on with, your brother? Your brother passed away. And it's like, oh, and no one ever talked about it. And then I showed her early animatic of the film. And then all of a sudden she started telling me all the stories about her brother, Joe. And so now, because of this film, her and her family, all of us are having these wonderful conversations about Joe. And it's like he's here now. He's back. It's not this thing that is this grief that wasn't allowed to be expressed. It's now allowing to be expressed. And so personally, it's been like a wonderful gift to connect with her and her family and Joe.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Wow. Is there anything else you guys would like to share in our time together about the process of making the movie, or, I don't know, Will, if you want to speak to the sort of personal aspect of it in terms of storytelling, or, I mean, as you said, ordinary people. And I'm with you. I'm one of those kids as well, where that was the film that, I saw 8 times instead of whatever, fun, easy movie choice I could have made.
Yeah.
But, Yeah, anything in terms of your longing as a filmmaker to explore this idea?
Look, for me in my, in my career, this is just a really great moment. Like I got to make a film with Michael that felt like authentic to me and what I wanted to say. And I get to work with you and Jamie, and it's just one of those moments. I mean, I've been through a lot of loss in my life, and also, during the making of the film, I became a father. So for me, the movie, it meant a lot. Like it meant a lot to be able to tell this story and to work with the team. And man, this business is, you guys know it, it's hard, and you always don't get to be who you want to be and what you want to say. And this is one of those moments where I got to be who I wanted to be through this story. And it was because we had a great team, So I think sometimes, what you're trying to say meets who you are and how you want to say it. And this is one of those moments, and I'm getting older now, and they don't happen that often. So I'm really grateful for it. Like they don't happen all the time, So
well, and when storytelling comes from the longing for healing, individual or global healing, it not only changes everything, it also gives us an opportunity to be comfortable with ambition, which is such a tricky relationship in terms of Hollywood. But to be ambitious in wanting a film that can be healing to reach every person possibly, it becomes about the celebration of being of service. And I hope you guys feel that, because it just participating in the way I have with Jamie Lemons, my producing partner, as a producer, we just feel so blessed that we can be part of it, of your extraordinary film, because all we hear back is the gratitude of what it has meant to people. So, such congratulations for telling a story that can be part of your own healing story, but also have helped so many of us, and will continue with your partnership with Everytown and through TikTok and every other way that this film and Netflix helps this film find people, that it will continue to encourage and incite healing. What a gorgeous thing, as I know your films always will, because that's where you guys come from. That's where you live. So I feel lucky to know you and talk to you about your beautiful movie.
Thank you, Laura.
So much.
It means so much. We're so grateful for you and Jamie, and we can't thank you enough. It's been a great journey, and we're here, and we're still going. It's so fun.
We're still going. Well, here's to much more, many more conversations. And I love talking to you guys, and let's do more of this.